If you want to effectively implement change, if you want to effectively grow your company, the key component that you address first is the people component. What do I mean by that? So behind me, this is the EOS process. EOS stands for the Entrepreneurial Operating System. It's a superb system to implement in an organization to drive the kind of growth, to get us through the ceilings that we've hit and break through to the next level. Because it looks at the core elements that need to be healthy in our organization and addresses each one of them. Vision, process, data, people, traction, and issues. Okay, 6. But what needs to be addressed first in terms of sequence and time? Well, what you see behind me, this is the overview of the EOS process itself. And you can just say this is an introduction that we do, the 90-minute meetings, an introduction we do with companies that are interested in doing that. It's not really the work. This is the first part of the work. It's called Focus Day. And after a brief discussion called Hitting the Ceiling and looking at the 5 mindsets and practices that leaders need to put into place in order to break through the ceilings that they are going to hit again and again. They need to simplify. They need to prioritize, systemize, predict, and so forth. So, but there's 5 of them. After that brief conversation, this stands for accountability chart. What is an accountability chart, you ask? It's an org chart plus. It's diving right into, do we have the right people in the right seats? And we've got to have both. That's actually 2 separate components. But let's look at the structure first. First of all, it says, what should, at the highest level of our organization, what should our structure look like? Do we have, and if you'll go with me, that every organization must have some version of 3 seats. Marketing, sales to create demand, operations to produce the product or service, finance to control the monies coming in and out. So biggest picture, you got to have those. But for your organization, what actually is how do we modify that? Does marketing and sales, do those break out into distinct seats at the table? When we look at our operations, do we have 1, 2, 3 core operations which drive our business? Do we have an engineering function? Do we have a production function? Okay, so there are those. And then finally, when we look at the finance big picture, does that break down into finance and accounting, IT, human resources, and so forth, managing the house? So the first step is, what should our structure look like? What do we have to have an implementer? That is, what is the seat that determines and ensures accountability across the enterprise and make sure we're all working well together? There's more to say on that, but stay with me a minute. So that's the basic structure. Once we have those blocks, then we need to look and say, okay, so for each block, what is the value that's provided by that seat? What value do they bring to the enterprise? What are the key roles? What are the hats that whoever sits in that seat must wear well to ensure success for that function? Okay, so you got me first. Seats, functions. Then and only then do we step back and evaluate the individuals we have now. And how well do they match that seat? How well do they get what's required? How well do they want that particular role? And what kind of capability do they have to do the job well? It's a simple framework, but we do look at and evaluate, and actually, when doing this particular exercise, we sometimes find that people are appropriately in the seats that they're supposed to be, and they get it, want it, and have the capability to do it. And sometimes we find people sitting in multiple seats, and sometimes we find certain seats now in the proper structure not properly occupied. Sometimes we find people are in the wrong seats, or they're not the right person for the seat itself. As you might guess, that's a hard conversation. Why do we do that? If you don't take care of the people component first, then everything else is going to be more difficult. We won't be able to set good goals where we're really going forward, particularly when we get to rocks. Rocks are 90-day priorities. You can't do that for yourself if you don't truly buy into the role and have the capability to do the role. All other deliberations are guarded and slow because at a certain level, people know that they don't have what it takes, and we as a team aren't structured appropriately. I learned this without having the answer for it. I learned this in a work with a client. I worked with him for about a year and a half. This was before I learned the EOS model and system. But I was doing a lot of the same sorts of things that come through EOS. We were looking at leadership. We were looking at our core values. We were looking at our vision and where we wanted to go. And it was always so difficult. This team could not find a way to work together, come to agreement about some of the most fundamental issues that they had. Now, this team's doing okay, this organization is doing okay, but it could not break through the ceiling to the next level because of a structure problem. Rather than having an integrator and then seats that are planned out, this structure was determined as a team structure. There's a history behind it, you don't need to know it. But no integrator. Everybody owners and all equals on the same team. And some of them, not the right people. They don't have the capability. Some of them don't want the seat that they're in. But at a certain level, they can't talk about it. Everybody feels a little stuck, and everybody wants their job. So they're at an impasse, and they will continue at the same level that they're doing now until another organization buys them out, puts in a CEO, and comes in, the CEO looks around and says, okay, you, and you need to head for the house, we'll pay you well, but it's time to go, and then reorganizes how that team looks. What's my point? There's some genius in the US system because we deal with the people issue first. Point number 2, if you have issues and some of this is resonating with you, I'm guessing that at core, you're seeing some people who are maybe the right people for your organization, but they're in the wrong seat. Or in fact, the structure itself doesn't support the development of the business the way we want it to grow. And you know that. Take care of the people issue first. And then other things, your team culture, how people get along, what your goals are, will be smoother, easier, and more effective.